Welcome to the Howell Business Beat, your go-to source for the latest insights, success stories, and trends shaping business community here in Livingston County. I'm Janelle Smith, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dianne Samples.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. We are excited to introduce our guest, Julia Keider with Keider Consulting. On this show, we talk about all sorts of things related to our local economy, entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers that are driving growth and innovation, which is really relevant to today's conversation. So welcome, Julia.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is my second business beat. So I am honored to be welcome back and having this conversation with you. A little bit different this time, but it's all exciting. And I got chills as you were reading that introduction. So thanks for having me.
Well, we are so happy to welcome you back to the show and to learn a little bit about how you have evolved since the last time you were here.
Yeah.
So if you would just do our listeners a favor and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So principal executive coach for Keider Consulting Group, which has been around for a little bit. I had previously had a consulting company working with school districts when I left teaching in 2014. And so since then, it's kind of evolved a little bit from just focusing on teaching and education, which is, I came from the education world after 14 years and moved into consulting and then dabbled in higher ed. So that was my previous role, working in human resources. And now am diving right into Keider Consulting Group, all things HR related and leadership development and community service, and really broadening the scope for coaching and what it means, particularly in education, but then also for human resources. So that's a little bit of where I've gotten until today. Yeah.
Awesome. So we actually had the pleasure of meeting several years ago in your more of your higher ed capacity, I believe, through our Employer and Education Advisory Council.
Yes.
So it was kind of, I think, really fun for me to see some of that evolution into where you are today with Keider Consulting. So I know you touched briefly on it, but can you go and dig a little bit deeper about, what is the mission of Keider Consulting?
Keider Consulting is all about making connections, and the connections from the here and now to the future forward. So in my work, particularly with aspiring leaders and executives, it was really about their vision and where they see themselves and how Keider Consulting really can foster and accelerate that connection between where they are now and where they want to be. Sometimes it's on behalf of the organization that they're working for or they're working with, and sometimes it gets really personal. And I shouldn't say sometimes. I think those two worlds merge all the time. So if somebody reaches out to me and says, Julia, I'm interested in kind of elevating myself professionally. I want to work on my professional brand. I really want to understand how leadership kind of fits into what I'm doing today and how I can accentuate that. That is both a personal and a professional goal, right? Because there will be personal advancements, or we take examples of how, hey, practice this in your personal life before you kind of go out into the real world and practice it in your professional life where it might be more risky. Practice some of the things that we're going to be talking about, whether it be, hey, I want to build confidence, or I want to learn how to say yes less, or I want to learn how to project myself in a more agreeable way. I'm just giving you some high-level examples. Let's practice that with your family, with your spouse, with the people that are closest to you, and the people that love you. So, it's about making connections between the here and now and the future forward.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that hits the nail on the head as far as that, how you see the blend of and those lives merging of the personal and professional. It's, I think, something really early on in my career that I struggled with. I think it's always really hard because you want to be professional and you think that doing that, or at least I did, that they had to be separate, right? You had, your personal life was your personal life and that needed to stay personal, and then your professional life. But how that really merges is really living and being truly authentic to who you are in all capacities. capacities of your life.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing when, people like yourself are able to help people potentially like me that, to live that in that really authentic way, because it is a huge game changer.
Yeah. I can even think about when I was a teacher, and I don't know if I evolved into that philosophy of keeping who I was as a teacher very separate from who I was as a person. But it was really hard because you build such relationships with students. Now I taught 17 and 18-year-olds, so they were on the cusp of, adulthood and making those life choices. But then eventually I had some of my students babysit my children and, do work for me. And now I've had former students that have been on our LARA board together. And so it was difficult for me. And I quickly realized, it probably took me about 5 years. I shouldn't say quickly. It took me some time to realize that I couldn't divide those two. And now when I think about, leadership development, it's like, don't divide the two. Because that authenticity that really is who you are in your comfortable space should be a part of the grace and the gift that you give other people, right? I don't want to assume that someone's nasty at home and then they're nice at work, right?
Right.
Let's be kind and gracious in both of those spaces, and I think that they can coexist.
Oh, and I think they should, because I think this goes back to like core values too. So if you're looking at like your core values, this was something I struggled with as well. I was like, well, your core values, are they different at work, or are they, are they different? But they're not. Your core values are you, and they're representative of who you are. And then integrating that into all of the facets of your life. And because that is your persona. I mean, it is who you are. So to try and keep those things separate, it's very, very
hard. It seems like the times have changed a little bit too, where your personal life and your professional life are so much more integrated than they ever used to be, where there isn't that divide. And your friends at work are becoming more of your personal friends and your family friends. So it is more of a cultivative and that more of that. It's just all blending together. There is no separation anymore, where there used to be.
And that's
very
okay.
defined lines.
Like, I think that's
exactly
also okay, and it should be how it is. It's interesting too, because you talked about your students and your relationships with your students. I mean, working at the chamber, everything that we do evolves around relationships, and so I think just coming off our Balloon Fest event and working very closely with individuals in our community on our committee, 30 people deep, and spending an entire weekend to 3 days, 4 days with them, and they're serving their community, and we're doing it hand in hand, and we're doing it together. It's amazing the types of relationships that we develop with our members and the people within our community, and it's truly something special. It's something to be honored, not something to be scared or afraid of, or like something, oh no, has to be completely separate. So I think that's a really, really cool that you're looking into that and really encouraging people to delve deeper into that space and do some exploration there. So.
Yeah, it makes me think even now as we're having this conversation, what those reservations or what those vulnerabilities are. Why somebody wouldn't at least, Venn diagram this out a little bit for themselves and say, what is the congruency in between that personal and professional? Because if I like you as a person, I probably want to work with you at some point, right?
Absolutely.
And I probably want to build that partnership, like we can do great things together. I had a conversation with a colleague and partner of mine. We're going to do some work together for the chamber, hopefully. And we've been such great business colleagues, in our own separate space, because she also has a consulting firm. And now we're going to be working together for the first time. I said, I hope we don't get friend divorced over this, and I don't see it happening, because we're such good colleagues to each other. We can talk business and we've become friends. And now we actually get the opportunity to work together. So that's it's the litmus test of you can withstand that relationship.
It's kind of like the best friends in high school who go off to college and room together. And then all of a sudden, it's like you find out you can't live together. But
I see good things happening for all of us. Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I think there's a higher chance and percentage of the good happening and more good unfolding and kind of having more of that ripple effect of positivity impact when you're working with those people versus, I mean, there's always a chance for fallout no matter who you're working
Yeah,
with.
like,
right?
okay, we're just good, like right here, right? Instead of moving it forward. You talked about volunteering a little bit in terms of, our work on the advisory with employers and educators through LESA, and that partnership, and that when you do volunteer, you make a partnership commitment, right? Based on the mission and the vision of that organization. So Livingston Sherm, been with them for, I think, about 6 years now. It was just before the pandemic that I joined that, and then took on some leadership roles there, became the president, and served a 3-year term as president-elect, and then past president, really supporting their mission and their vision, and that work continues on in a great way. And how those have become friendships, right? That is kind of like a professional organization where you portray yourself, but we have a lot of good laughs, and we know our little hot buttons and our little jokes. And so that is just another way to really kind of extend that professional and personal relationship, is that volunteering. And I got to meet you too, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's been really fun. I want to jump back a step because you talked a little bit about teaching and then Keider Consulting. How'd you get there?
I was going to ask that question.
Sorry, Dianne.
Well, as you know, in any journey, when you're looking back on it, it's never a straight line, right? It's never just here's the destination, there's the road, go for it. So I was fortunate from some lead mentors, some administrators when I was teaching at Fowlerville, really saw in me some opportunities for leadership. And I had always gravitated toward that. Like right after undergrad, I went into grad school, and I pursued, this teacher leadership program at Eastern Michigan, and that just extended. And so some of that was coaching training. And so the training that we received, and is still in existence for Michigan schools, is cognitive coaching. And the schools that I work with now still do that training. They still work with the state of Michigan, or they hire them independently. They truly believe in that method of coaching, which is mediating thinking. Okay. So 2 years of that, 2 years of training with colleagues, more training after that on group coaching, and then they call it adaptive schools, where you learn how to facilitate meetings, which we can talk about in a little bit, is really about, fostering that relationship with your colleagues and your direct reports in a very coach-like way. Okay. So lots of practiced a lot with my students, who, again, that safe space, right? They were going to be forgiving. They didn't know what I was doing. And eventually I would have to tell them, and I shouldn't say what I was doing, right? The practices that I was incorporating that were so seamless into teaching, like asking thoughtful questions that were baseline understanding and knowledge, and then moving toward higher level thinking, right? And sometimes that scares people, and scares, when I say people, like people that I'm coaching with, like just ask me like the yes, no questions, and like baseline, like what happened. And I'm going to push the needle a little bit. I'm going to ask you, well, why do you think that happened? Or what do you think might result from that happening? Like, let's predict now. So we move into like this basic understanding and knowledge base, like just tell me what happened, to like, well, why do you think that happened? Or what do you think might result from that happening? Now we're moving into analyzing and synthesizing, like putting pieces together. And then now we start formulating our own ideas of reality of what we want to happen. So there's like a little bit of a triangle, if you will, to think about how the coaching conversation actually evolves. And it works really well when you're just talking about learning. Just learn to understand, learn why that exists. Let's dig into some research. Let's do a little hunch building. And then let's formulate our own ideas as far as how we want to take that forward.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you just a little bit of a snippet into like the progression of that type of conversation. And so practicing that with students, like I feel like I was already doing a lot of that, but when I took the coaching training, it made really good sense. And then I would tell them, I'm going to ask you these baseline questions, and then I'm going to kind of elevate it, push it a little bit. My hope, as with even in the professional world of coaching and leadership development, is what I can model in the conversation, or what I can model through the questioning, ends up trickling into the client or the student actually modeling those exact same behaviors. So they build conversations that are knowledge building, and then analytical, and then creative, right? through the people that they engage with. My best examples are my children, quite honestly. Sometimes they shock me in terms of the questions that they ask each other, or when we're having dinner time conversations, when my 19-year-old will say things, I'm like, you're such a good coach.
Well, and I feel like kids, even young adults, teenagers, they're less inhibited. They're a little more open. Whereas an adult, or at least with me, I'm always like, okay, what is like trying to calculate, like, okay, what should I say? Or we feel like there's an expectation of our answer. Whereas with kids, it's just much more uninhibited, and they're just a little bit more open to just saying what they feel or what their thought process is.
Well, we have to be reciprocal on that partnership. So it sounds like, you're the same when you're having conversations with your kids. Mine are 19 and 21 now. I can still call them kids, right? Is that you build that reciprocity of conversation. Like, I'm really curious about what you're thinking or what this could eventually lead to. So rather than tell you what that's going to lead to through my own individual experience, I'm actually going to ask you because I'm curious about you. I make the focus about you, not about me. Now, if it comes into play like, hey, can I offer, a story for you, or I've kind of experienced something similar, which is so funny. My husband, I had this conversation last night. It's the offer. Again, it's the ask to be able to say, do we have enough of a trusting relationship in this moment to actually dive into that, where you're going to take my criticism, my story, my offering as something that's going to actually help you grow. And as a parent, sometimes the proverbial answer is yes, mom, right? But it's at least the ask to entertain that, because I've had my kids say, not right now. And I have to accept that. Like, I'll give it when they're ready for it, and they can kind of consciously think to themselves, like, no, I just want to vent right now. I really don't want to know what your perspective is. Or I'm so into my own future planning that you're going to muddy this up for me by giving me your perspective.
But that's a really good point too, is that it's asking people their permission to give your advice or to give your perspective. Because if they're not ready to accept, if they're not in a place where they're ready to accept it, then it's a moot point. For them to say, well, not right now, it's not like, no, I don't want to hear it. It's just like you said, you know what, I just need to kind of work through my thoughts, let me get to a place, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say. Because then I can process it and probably end up using it, because it was probably really good advice.
Right.
Well, I think when we reflect on that personally too, like, I do this with my husband all the time. And if he's talking to me, I'm like, all right, well, are you venting or are you looking for solutions?
Yeah.
Do you need me to listen and hear you right now? Or do you need me to provide support and possible solutions? And I think that, again, that's a great example of like how you can take something in your personal life and translate it to professional and business. Because I know personally, when I get frustrated or if I need a place to vent, usually I call my mom, and I'm like, I'll just tell her, I'm like, I'm not looking for solutions right now. I'm just I just want somebody to talk to. And it's because sometimes you know what the solution is, but you just need to work that out. So it's amazing to see how, you are just really this kind of this natural teacher, this natural coach, and how you've been able to lean into this kind of on the business side and the HR side. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper to see, you mentioned earlier in our conversation partnerships with the chamber, and we're really excited, and I'm excited to have you here today to speak a little bit more to what that looks like from our Chamber Alliance.
Yeah.
So we've partnered with the Heartland Area Chamber and the Greater Brighton Chamber of Commerce to bring the Level Up Leadership course to Livingston. So if you want to share a little bit about what that looks like, and this is kind of building upon our Leadership Livingston cohort that's also open, accepting applications for its second cohort. But one thing that we noticed and we gathered through that and working with that first cohort is they were hungry for more. So that helped us start a conversation with you.
Oh, yeah. And it was such a pleasure to kind of dive into that and create that. Here's where we've been. This is where we want to go idea. First of all, I have to give credit to the two of you and your team for doing a wonderful job of teeing this up, right? The momentum and the membership and all of the activities that you've done have really made people more hungry for extended and elevated learning opportunities, and particularly in the business realm. I know this is, we're kind of presenting this as a little bit of an HR and a leadership, but to me, this is really about the community and how it's able to showcase the wonderful stories that are within the people that have been in this community, whether it's been 6 months or 50, 60 years even. These people have been part of the community, whether it's chamber oriented or they're doing a service and they're just kind of flying under the radar. So Livingston's Leadership Level Up is a 6-week cohort, and we wanted to make this really tight for the leaders in the community and in industry, not targeting any specific industry, but these are individuals who see themselves as wanting to give their story of legacy to the community. And while they're doing that, so we're gonna learn about how to tell the story, or a story, because storytelling is very powerful. You asked me to tell my story. Okay, so I gave you a little bit of a snippet, not rehearsed necessarily, but this is in preparation of telling a really strong story of one's leadership and one's leadership legacy. So legacy is really about like the learning that you've done that you want to share with somebody else. And some people are like, okay, I'm 25 years old. What legacy story do I have to share? Well, maybe you're not telling your legacy story. Maybe you're telling somebody else's legacy story that has really impacted you. So I don't want to say that Leadership Livingston Level Up is just for more seasoned people, because I do see it as an opportunity for younger individuals that find the leader within them to be able to say, like, I want to share somebody else's legacy story because it has impacted and shaped me and the legacy that I want to continue. So 6 weeks, once a week for 3 hours, we're going to dive into your story and really pull on leadership concepts and philosophies and mentors of leaders, right? Higher level leaders, and maybe even more organic local leaders that can really help identify, like, what is their legacy? How did that come to be? What are those many lessons along the way that have now shaped this person into who they are? I think some people get intimidated by the idea of legacy, like thinking it has to be this big, wonderful thing. But if you just think about it from your parents' perspective, like, what was the legacy they wanted to leave with you? It was, those taglines of like, just be honest, Janelle. Whatever you do, just be honest, right? And that could be the legacy story. And then what has happened, what has transpired, and those many lessons along the way that you can formulate. So within that, I'm going to incorporate some opportunities for coaching, learning kind of what's behind the scenes for coaching, how you actually create more legacy with the people that you work with using coaching strategies. We talked about like the navigating of the conversation, just basic understanding, or how you ask questions, or even the asking of the permission. Like, we can talk about that for hours and how to do that. Those are going to be infused in the 6 weeks as well. So the pièce de résistance is the final showcase where we want to hear everyone's legacy story. We'll love to do a presentation with everybody, a little bit of TED Talk, but in a very concise way so that everybody can hear those legacy stories.
And that will be, the culminating event of this, and open to our membership to attend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, so there's a format of, presentation. It's called Disrupt HR, and they do 5 minutes, 20 slides, like give your little 5-minute pitch about what you love, hate, / whatever about HR. Similar concept, 5 to 7 minute, here's my legacy story, kind of keep it short, keep it concise, but it's so meaningful. So throughout those 6 weeks, being able to practice, develop, evolve, share that story is going to be really, I hope, something that we build a legacy for and that will continue on for years.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you said that a legacy doesn't have to be this grand, huge legacy. And I think back to like my mom, when she, whenever anybody left to go home or left, she would always say, just be kind to one another. And it was just something so simple, and usually just kind of blew it off like, okay, yeah, be kind to one another. But then when you really stop to think about it, I mean, if everybody were just to be kind to one another, what I mean, how much more wonderful would the world be? And it's just something so simple, but it just gets you thinking about things. And I think that's a great lesson for people to learn, is that a life well lived doesn't have to be this grand experience.
Yeah, or you don't have to make tons of money,
Right,
or you don't have to,
Create something, or
when we think of abundance, abundance is infinite. Your abundance might be, my 10%, but it's your abundance. And so whatever that looks like for the individual, why not share it?
exactly. I think that's a great
Your mom
message.
and my mom are very different. My mom always said, make good choies. I don't know what that says about me.
No,
but-
I say that with my kids. I tell them to make good choices. So I'm right there with your mom.
Yeah, that is definitely something I've passed on to my kids.
Yes.
So just a little fun there, but no, really looking forward to the culminating event and what this looks like with that. And I know we mentioned it'll be like 5 to 7 minute presentations, which means their space for this is very limited.
Yeah. So as far as, the number of people that we're accepting into this cohort, right? We would love for this to go long and people to celebrate their legacy and share those stories. But, between 12 and 15, maybe 16 people, is that kind of what we're thinking about
Right.
here? To kind of keep it, we kind of want to keep it a little elite, right? So we can run it again and people tightening it up a little bit, because I feel like that gives a sense of, hey, that's something special. And it's not like, we're going to, we're looking for a specific person. We're actually looking for a wide range of stories and opportunities. And when I say the stories, there is learning inside of each story. So what you think you might have in mind for your story might not end up being the story because of the learning that we're doing along the way. So yeah, we're tackling what your own personal mission, what your own personal vision is. We're going to be doing the Work of Leaders DISC assessment, which I'm super excited about. Not too many people do the Work of Leaders DISC assessment. And if you're not familiar with DISC, it's DISC. It is a pretty standard assessment that incorporates like Myers-Briggs and the big five. And it's very research-based, been around for decades. But the Work of Leaders that I've done with several organizations now really gives you an assessment of like, these are the areas when you're as a leader, when you're crafting a vision, when you're working in leadership to build alignment with teams toward the vision. And then you really have to figure out execution in terms of what are the individual things that are actually going to get this moving and in motion to make the vision a reality. Not easy and not a fluid line, right? Like vision, alignment, execution, like stopping points up and down and all the things. But knowing about yourself, what it takes and what are the areas that it's going to take you more energy to lean into, that's what that assessment provides. So we'll infuse that into the conversation as well as a self-reflection tool. Great tool to take with you at work, great tool to take with you at home, because as mothers and fathers and, young adults, we want some level of leadership that we can call our own through our autonomy and decision making. And so that will come to play too. When we're asking, we're part of that advisory group, or like we want students to have a plan. Well, they kind of have to have a vision before they
Right.
understand like what's the plan, what's the execution of this plan to kind of get to that point. So even as we're talking about 17 and 18-year-olds in high school, the same principles apply.
Right. And I do think that DISC component is huge. I think so we did that in the Leadership Livingston and just, touched on it a couple times throughout that course and how valuable that is. So to kind of take it to that next step to do the Work of Leaders, I think is going to be amazing. And go ahead.
Well, when I think about the differentiator between everything DISC for workplace, right, it's a really good baseline assessment.
Right.
I'm not even saying that the results will change, but the report is really focused on leadership. Okay, so the general one that Leadership Livingston took was a great baseline in understanding, like, what are your fears, what are your motivations, how are you interacting with people. But this one in particular is about your leadership. It doesn't even say like a leadership style, but it's like, here are the areas that they've identified of core leadership when you're developing a vision, and you need to be able to take perspective Well, if you fill out the assessment and you're low on perspective taking because you like to do things like by yourself and you're very, siloed in that thinking, that might work great in certain circumstances. But when you're developing a vision, taking perspective is going to be essential. So you want to be higher ranking on that. And if you're low, like, okay, I have to work harder at this then, is how they phrase it.
Right. And I think it's just understanding and that self-reflection on understanding who you are as an individual. It's not good, bad. It's indifferent. It's just understanding that picture of that so you can lean into those areas where you might have to put a little more effort, and being aware. I mean, it creates a sense of awareness around who you are as a leader too and how you interact with others.
Yeah. Anybody that's in a leadership position or even an aspiring leadership position, I think this is a great opportunity for that. I know we're shaping it as, level up from the community, like, hey, who are the resources around me, to now focusing on you and the people that you lead around you, right? So I think Leadership Livingston's like a really high level approach, and this is grounding it a little bit more to the individual and those that are around them to be able to make that specific impact. I do think that they work really good in conjunction together.
Right, which is fantastic. So we are going to be holding an alumni night, so Leadership Livingston Alumni Night in August, and we would love for all of our members to come out. We'll have our top graduates be part of a panel to share their experience about Leadership Livingston and what's on the horizon for them. And Julia, you'll be emceeing and facilitating that, hopefully. So I'm just going to say it and put it out there right now. So, but it would be a great opportunity for everybody to come out and also not only learn about the Leadership Livingston, but also network one-on-one with Julia to just really understand what this level up is and to ask additional questions. And we plan on kicking everything off this fall.
I love it, and this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for the community. We did get the approval of some additional, I just want to say rewards or recognition with regard to, HRCI credits and SHRM credits for those people in the HR world. And if anything, it's just a great opportunity for recognition. Like, we've vetted this program such that it is aligned with other credentialing if people decide to pursue that. I know I talk about HR and people think like payroll and benefits and all those wonderful things. And it truly is. And I can testify to this as somebody, as a former teacher turned into the world of HR. There is leadership everywhere when it comes to HR because we're talking about people and we're talking about work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're really looking forward to it. And we hope that you guys will join us in August for our alumni event. Julia, thank you for joining us today on the Whole Business Beat. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks.